Good afternoon, everybody. Today I'm chatting with Thomas Lamb from Myriad Uranium. In this interview, we discuss the uranium market, and we also get into Thomas's background and how he ended up with what I think are a couple of really interesting projects. Guys, when I look at junior mining companies, one of the things that I like to know is how much money has historically been spent drilling the property. Now, the Copper Mountain Project that Myriad has quite a substantial amount of historic drilling on it. Their website says that there's 2,000 plus holes on that property, which to me is really interesting. If you're looking for an undervalued name that you want to do more due diligence on, I think that this is a story that you're going to want to hear about. All right, everybody, enjoy the interview. Thomas, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
So you are CEO of a uranium company, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But first, I've got to talk some uranium. The price of uranium spiked all the way up to almost $110, not quite there. And it's recently come back these last couple of weeks. What's your read on what's happening in the uranium markets right now?
Yeah, I think things are as exciting as ever, with as much potential as ever. And that should eventually take spot up in well into the mid hundreds, 150 and beyond. Now that I've been focused on uranium for quite a while, spot is nice because it gives everybody a place to look, and as it goes up, it gives you a nice feeling, the psychological boost. But the fact is that the term price it just keeps going up and up. And if you follow what Cameco is doing and their strategy and other really, the big sophisticated groups, they see things, the trajectory just going up and up. So it's a little bit of a pullback in the spot. It doesn't take much because there are only a few people participating in it. Some games being played, et cetera. So we're going to see these wild fluctuations. But the overall trajectory is just as exciting as ever. And it's because the fundamentals are there. There's just no way around the supply-demand issues. There just isn't because there's no secondary supply to address the shortfalls. So price is going up.
What's your background with uranium? How did you end up becoming CEO of a uranium company?
Well, I don't have a formal uranium background, first thing I should say, and I'm not a geologist either, but I've got a strong finance background. I was a corporate lawyer early in my career, M&A, corporate finance type stuff. And then I started some mining companies, became an entrepreneur in 2005, started a company called Gold Group with a friend. And it ended up being quite successful. It went from zero to a few $100 million market cap. It was a gold producer. I learned a lot about mining, commodities, got invited to do all sorts of interesting things. Joined the board of Russia's second largest gold producer in 2012. I was living in London, went to London Business School, did a master's, et cetera. And at commodities, uranium was hot. Of course, 2007, 2008, 2009, I was involved, although not directly, so I wouldn't talk about it as if I did it. But learned a lot then, involved in lots of exciting companies, and built some, built a cobalt company with a few partners focused in East Africa. And we sold that to what is essentially an offshoot of Glencore, called Jervois. We sold that a few years ago to them, and I stayed on as an executive. So that's not uranium, that's cobalt. But I've been, looking at uranium the whole time. So there I finished East Africa. A couple of years ago, I got asked to be a consultant to Myriad Uranium, which was working in Niger in West Africa at the time. I speak French. I'm an Africa guy, spent 11 years living and working there on and off. And I got invited to be a consultant, but I think the not so secret plan was that I would become CEO. I eventually did agree to be CEO in November of 2022, so a little while ago. And that's my journey. So here I am as CEO. I don't have a big uranium technical background, but I've learned a lot and have been laser focused on it since.
Yeah, it's interesting because our original background at the Deep Dev was we originally did a lot of our coverage on cannabis companies. And then when 2020 hit and all of the economic stimulus and money printing, it seemed like, okay, we should probably start to position ourselves in some gold names. And it's funny because as we started to call up all these gold CEOs and figure out how to position ourselves in some of the gold names we liked, the one common thing we kept hearing from everyone was those who had made money in the markets made their money in uranium.
Yeah.
And that was a very common theme that we kept hearing.
Yeah. Very interesting. No, I'm experiencing the same. I just had a meeting yesterday with a group out of Florida, wildly successful uranium investors. They made, I almost don't want to say it because of the people might put the pieces together, but astonishing amounts of money last cycle. And they've had that to deploy and leverage ever since. Yeah, there's a bunch of these groups. Yeah.
Okay, so it's the first time we've had you on. Can you give us a high level overview of Myriad Uranium?
Myriad is now I'm CEO. I've drunk the uranium Kool-Aid. I'm really into. I forgive me if I'm not overly enthusiastic. I've thought about all this carefully. Myriad is an extremely exciting junior. I think it's the highest torque, highest potential uranium junior you're going to find out there. That's because we have some really interesting attributes. Okay, Myriad listed on the CSE, symbol M, OTC, symbol MYRUF, also listed in Frankfurt. We have 34.2 million shares outstanding, 46% insider ownership. I am the second largest shareholder on the NOBO list. I invest every round. I've got hundreds of thousands of my own money in at 20 cents and higher. So these are just this is the backdrop regarding the company. The assets, we have basically hit the jackpot just in spite of ourselves, a bit of luck. We have two asset packages. One is 1,822 square kilometers in the Timmersoy Basin in Niger. These are assets we picked up before uranium got hot. They are all old French government assets that were slated for intensive exploration. But then Fukushima hit. So this is the old Areva assets. These licenses sit immediately adjacent to the world's second largest deposit, Immereren, 8 kilometers away on the same structure. And that license that borders Immereren also borders Madaouela, that's GoviX's Madaouela deposit. And it borders, it's just south of Somer and Komanak. These are the uranium mines in Niger. So this license, our northern license called Ajobout, is all the structures go right through it. And the French had ambitious plans for that license. So this is a world-class exploration license. We have 3 more licenses. One of them is just on the same structure down the fault from Global Atomic's Dasa, which is the top uranium deposit in Africa. High grade, super high volume. And then we have 2 other licenses in Niger. We have world-class licenses in Niger, company making. So that's our first asset package. Now our focus, because there was a military coup in Niger in July, as there is every few years there, it takes 6 months to a year to settle down. Our focus is Wyoming. Second asset package is the Copper Mountain Uranium Deposit or Uranium Project in Wyoming. There we have a large land package. It's a really amazing story. We acquired our interest in this project area starting in August, September. We signed the letter of intent, negotiated it, because we needed to pivot after the coup in Niger. We needed a second asset package. These licenses, neither we nor our project partner understood them when we did the deal. We've since obtained a bunch of data, and this has turned into a world-class uranium project. Second project, Copper Mountain Uranium Project in the center of Wyoming, has 15 to 30 million pounds of historic resource estimated by Union Pacific Railway, 63.8 million pound exploration target with upside, massive upside from there, 6 uranium deposits, a mine plan. It was almost a mine in 1979, an open pit plan that Union Pacific had. And it just goes on from there. We've gone from being an explorer to all of a sudden holding an interest in what could be one of the largest uranium projects in the state of Wyoming. And yet we are just a micro junior that not many people have heard of. So that's a summary of Myriad Uranium. It's an extremely exciting junior that the weighing machine that is the market will figure us out. And I think we're going to see order of magnitude gains from here. So it's a bit of a summary of Myriad.
How did you acquire these properties? Like, were these properties from when you were just sort of like you had like a private company from years back that you kind of grabbed these and were holding on to, or were these recently negotiated? What does that deal structure look like?
So all this is, if we had done these deals and understood what we had when we did them, we would have, for example, done a big listing in the U.S. At a big multiple of our current valuation. What happened is my colleague and actually the previous CEO of Myriad, Pete Smith, he put this deal together. He was a boxer on the boxing team at the University of Cambridge in the UK, did a master's there. We actually went to law school together. That's how we know each other. He was on the boxing team. Somebody from the team knew somebody with the connections in Niger, and a series of fortunate events and connections. And he acquired for Myriad these licenses in Niger. This is before uranium got hot. So that's how that deal came together. It's a really nice backstory there, but I'll save that for another time. We were doing very well. Company was flourishing, and then there was the military coup that knocked us down. GoVX, Global Atomic, which has the DASA project, Africa's top project, also a Canadian company. And so in July, end of July, beginning of August of last year, we knew we had 6 months to a year to wait, and we started looking around for a way to pivot. And there was Pete Smith again. He was CEO and is CEO of Rush Rare Metals, which your viewers should take a look at. Rush Rare Metals. It's just going on a bit of a run right now, as it should. It has an exciting Quebec project as its principal project. It had this Copper Mountain Uranium Project as its secondary project. Didn't really fully understand it because it couldn't. The tech report on it said it's a past producer, but we have no data. You're either going to have to start a maiden drill program or find some old data to figure out what's there. Well, we signed the letter of intent. We obtained some historic data. Again, a series of fortunate events. Pete was driving in the backwoods of Wyoming, encountered a rancher. Make a long story short, rancher had some data. Pete bought it. It revealed what I just told you, which is instead of this being an early stage exploration project, this Copper Mountain Uranium Project has had 117 million Canadian dollars in today's equivalent spent on it already. We went from thinking it had $0 spent on it to finding out that in the 1970s, it had 117 million in exploration work done on it. 2,000 drill holes, 6 deposits discovered, mine plan, tons of past production, leachability tests, in situ recovery testing, and it's just a bonanza. It's basically been handed to us as this amazing project. We effectively have the benefit of $117 million worth of work on it, and we're sitting on it.
That's what caught our eye when we were going through the deck is
Yep.
It said that there's 2,000 historic drill holes
Yep.
On the project, which
it's unbelievable.
Anyone who's a sophisticated investor in the junior mining space always says, I want to invest in projects that have been drilled like Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
And that appears to be what you guys now was this Copper Mountain project originally, were they exploring for uranium when all this money was spent?
So absolutely, yes, it was all uranium focused. They didn't even test for other elements largely. And a lot of the holes were drilled so you could drop a probe down them anyway, and you're testing for radioactivity. So there are other interesting elements there too, by the way, quite a bit of gold, but that's another story for another time. What happened was Cold War started, 1950s. People were prospecting for uranium, and there was a big discovery made by a guy named Jim Davis, 1950s. And he discovered the Arrowhead Mine, which has produced 500,000 pounds of uranium in the center of our license, the center of our area. 50s and 60s, it produced. Some other mines next door that we now hold produced very nice high grade, 1.3%, 30,000 tons at 1.3%, which I think adds up to about 600,000 pounds of uranium. Excuse me. So it was a prolific producing area during the Cold War. And these were deposits that were just obvious at the surface and were exploited. But the price of uranium was volatile. Union Pacific came along. Back then it was oil companies and railways that were exploring for uranium largely. Union Pacific had the rights to it, and they just leaned in and they discovered a huge endowment of uranium. So they found some, and they found what looked like a really big deposit in the center of the project area called Canning, or North Canning. And they went from there. They developed a mine plan, 3-pit mine plan, and they just kept drilling and finding more uranium. So as we announced last week or the week before, there was a central area, a high-grade area in the middle of what would be the central pit at Canning. And we announced the results of 84 historic drill holes at that high-grade area with a transitioning to the moderate grade. And we can see what Union Pacific saw. Very exciting, really nice high grades, and a lot of them in that high grade zone, very high for Wyoming. And so yeah, Union Pacific found uranium, found a lot. They kept going.
And this is the idea here, is that this would be in situ mining?
Good question. Our deposit type is a mix of several different kinds of deposits, of uranium deposits. That means that some of it, maybe a lot of it, maybe a high proportion of it is amenable to in situ recovery, but we don't know. It's not all roll front sandstone like the projects to the east. So the historic documents data says that the experts back then, 1970s, were cautiously optimistic about in situ. They did some test work, and our current advisors, who are leaders in situ recovery, are also cautiously optimistic. However, next step is, say, $600,000 to $1 million worth of spend to test that. So I can't say it's in situ recovery amenable, but we're somewhat optimistic about that. Now, the upside about that uncertainty, which is the result of this sort of mishmash of deposit types and how the uranium occurs, is that we may have Athabasca-like deposits that sit within our project area. They would not have been discovered by Union Pacific because they were looking for a totally different type of moderate grade, high volume, bulk deposit. We have potential for massive discoveries also in our license area, which is a bit unusual for Wyoming, partly because the granites that surround our project and feed the area have a very high background uranium 50 ppm, which is just 50 ppm shy of the cutoff grade for the mining that Union Pacific had planned. So that's everywhere. So there's, anyway, vast amount of uranium there, big exploration upside, and yes, in situ recovery potential.
So what's the next plans for exploration? Are you guys going to have drills in the ground this summer?
That's the plan. Our geologist is going to visit as soon as the snow clears, which could be in a few weeks. And he's going to locate old holes. We have to uncap them, see how they are. If they're good, we can drop our own probes down to verify the historic data. But yeah, and we'll twin holes and we'll drill some new holes. So yes, drilling. We have big historic resources that we need to bring current under 43-101. And that will include, a fair amount of work this summer. But once we do that, you look at these juniors, they have exploration targets of 8 million pounds, 11 million pounds. You can look at our comps. We have exploration target of 63 million pounds. And our estimates are very robust because they were done by Union Pacific with a huge amount of holes. I won't name names, but some of our comps have drilled 50 holes, 100 holes, and they're still just sort of looking around, poking around for some uranium. Contrast that with us. So we've already got it.
Yeah, well, Thomas, thanks very much for hopping on here today. I think you guys have a very interesting story, especially for what feels like the early stages of a uranium bull market. These are the kind of projects that I think suddenly maybe weren't that sexy with $25 uranium, but with 80 plus, who knows, and who knows where the price of uranium goes. Suddenly these projects that have all this historic drilling, especially on US soil, are super interesting. Yep. So I think you guys have a very interesting story, and I appreciate you taking the time to hop on here and chat with us.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I suggest your viewers, even if you don't invest, stick us on your ticker. You can watch a very active, interested group build a company and create a liquidity event. I think I just see that as our trajectory. So keep an eye on us, everybody.
Perfect. Thanks, Thomas.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this interview, please smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Also, let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks, everyone.